Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this week's Fake Accents Unite. As you can see from the guests available on this stream, the Britisher has failed to arrive even 5 minutes on time. So instead, I am joined for the time being by Ginger Bill.
Good evening.
And we may later be joined by Sarah from V's stream. And the Britisher assures me that he will be here as well. So it's always good for him to be fashionably late. He needs to perhaps polish his brain jar. How are we all this evening? Good.
Yes, we are very good this evening.
Marvelous. Have you've read the list of topics that we have for this evening?
Yes.
Been explaining. We have a smorgasbord, as the Germans say, of stuff tonight over a broad range of subjects. I've just been informing Ginger Bill of the fact that my says not so obvious get super chats already, so we can spread Danish supremacy. I would love for you. You can spread it already if you like by using my my PayPal link in the description, and I'll read your messages for free. Other than that. But the what was it I was saying? The yes, my latest video, the white people have no culture video, has received a copyright strike bill. It's a terrible shame.
What on?
It's on the music, believe it or not any of the many images that I stole from Google, but the music, which happens to be in the public domain, and therefore there is no authority to copyright strike it, has been struck. So until then, you may see ads on that video. It's not me, unfortunately. Good evening. Joe Neverton says, not only is it a ginger, it's this ginger.
Hey, could be worse.
How could it?
I'm just trying to think of no, I can't think of anything bad. I'm just trying to think of bad people with ginger hair. It's very hard. Ron Weasley, maybe?
Wait, but no. Rupert Grint on this stream, I think, would be a bit of a travesty.
Yes.
Let me see what we're saying. I don't get why anyone would say white people have no culture. White culture is axiomatic. It makes the guy saying it look like a moron. See, I don't believe that white culture exists, but I do believe that white peoples have cultures, and that those cultures are very much impactful on the world stage, have been through the history, and are not negative in the majority. So there we go. So let's go on. How much more do we need to watch your old vids according to your statistics for you to get super chats anyhow? I have all the required viewing hours. What I need is 500 more people to click that subscribe button.
Come on, everybody subscribe to him. He's really good. Please click the subscribe button and the notification bell so it'll ding when you get his videos come through.
The funniest thing is that was it the Britisher who has submitted his monetization claim months ago, 2 months ago now, still hasn't received monetization. So even if we get to 1,000, it may be a little while, but on the other hand, it's all good.
Even when you do get monetization, don't be expecting much money. It may not even be pennies.
Oh no, I'm not bothered about the monetization, but I need monetization to enable super chat, and that's the thing I'm after. Because
yes, super chat is the best thing, of course.
Silly Sailor says, I bet base Liz beats you. Honestly, do you even want a wrench on this channel, man? Like, come on.
So someone says, I've met people that generally hate ginger and red-headed people. It's bizarre. No wonder why this prejudice originates. I actually know why. Clearly, because I've experienced it all my life. But yeah, it's mainly just, first it's easy because you're different, but then there's also like folklore stuff, which is like ginger hair. Like there are those people. They have the devil and stuff like that because they've got that red hair. It's just people pick on things because they're different.
Purdue says, what does Sarah have to do just to be introduced as Sarah? Poor lady seems to have the surname from V's stream everywhere she goes. Well, that's the only thing that she tends to do. She refuses to make her own YouTube channel, and until she does produce any kind of regular content, it's the easiest way. Otherwise, she could be anything. I could introduce her as Daughter of Albion, I suppose, but then everyone will just call her Sarah anyway. The Goat 555 still awaiting for the fake accent king, the Britisher, to make his grand entrance. You mean for him to stumble in, somewhat inebriated from too much Earl Grey, and to trip over his own uniform? Yes. Purdue. Get Streamlabs. Better than Super Chat. You would get 100% of shekels. Interesting. I may have to have a look at that. Yes, that'd be good. Rose of Dawn. Also, you should give me a wrench because I'm a fellow liberalist. But also because I like your content and I know you and can trust you. Probably. There you go. Have a wrench. Voila. I should remove Oozaloos because he's only on here to make fun of Discordia. That's his main thing. Silly Sailor reckons it's the great philosophy of Eric Cartman. Gingers are just not real people.
We don't have soul, so that's what explains it all.
Yeah, clearly.
Yeah.
Well, let's have a look. See. Right. So whilst we wait for the Britisher, let's do one of these fun ones. He hates the political stuff, so let's kick off. So I'll share my screen. Here we go. And present to everyone. So when you talk, it won't.
Turtles all the way down.
Turtles all the way down. How about Sarah, daughter of Albion? Sounds very grandiose. Yes. Well, all right. I'll introduce her as that when she comes on, and we'll see how much she laughs. Here's an article I found just for funsies. The gender play gap behind the fun facade of a feminist pop-up museum, and as you can see, this stream, if it ever was going to be monetized, has now been demonetized for the sheer number of replica female nipples on display. It's just the natural thing. That Lady Thing, an installation in San Francisco, gives issues of sexism. And keep that in mind, that this is all considered to be sexism, an unlikely coat of color in a light-hearted way of communicating a serious message. Light-hearted. I have no doubt that they think it's light-hearted. Sutsko, I'll present to everyone. That might get you banned. Go to PornTube or something like that. Strong. As a Scot, gingers are appropriating my culture. Are you? Is that what's happening, Ginger Bill? Are you appropriating Scottish culture?
I'm not even from Scotland, so I must be. Not even my family is.
You speak with a Scottish accent. This is fake accents unite.
This is my actually Scottish. Can I? It probably sound like a Mumbai call center. I cannot do accents.
Can you try
whatsoever?
Just for the dance like a monkey for the chat.
Dance like a monkey. This will sound. Oh god, this is going to be really offensive. But I can't do a Scottish accent. No, clearly that sounds. Oh, you see, this is it. I can't do them.
Thank you for trying.
My own.
I love when I get a new guest on because they'll try basically to do anything. Good evening, Mistress Crimson. You love this stream. We love you. It's all good. Right. Earlier this summer, Jamie Shaw, I assume that's a female Jamie, entered the pop-up exhibition 29 Rooms in San Francisco and was taken aback. It was hard for me because each room is designed by a celebrity or a brand, so there's no interarching narrative, said Shaw, a creative director. Storytelling is not a continuum, blah, 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 blah. Apparently the pop-up selfie museum craze is taking over America. May have started with the Museum of Ice Cream, and it may be good for Instagram, but lacks substance. That's part of the reason why Shaw is bringing a snarky feminist installation called That Lady Thing, which has a link to it, and we'll go there later, I'm sure. A pop-up with a purpose. It serves up selfies with a side of self-respect. Does anyone do pop-up selfie museum type things? Is that a thing? I have not heard of it before reading this article, so
I'm not even sure what it means.
I assume it just means, you know how you get like people pop up stalls for a market. I assume it's just there for a week or something and then gone.
But I gathered that pop-up bit, but that's whatever.
Well, I imagine it's bizarre installations, like you can see on the left-hand side here.
I mean, I probably would visit one. I do usually visit like pop-up museums and art galleries. So.
Oh, well, it just seems to be a bit bizarre, like a quirky place to take a selfie.
Well,
apparently.
Eggs that size, probably in a Darling museum, it'd be great.
Right. Here we go. We wanted to get our messages about gender inequality. Okay, yeah, inequality would be They're out there in a creative way. So we infiltrated a generally vapid space.
Oh,
okay, calling selfies vapid. Now that's grossly offensive to every millennial out there. To inject some substance into the superficiality with some superficial statistics that have no bearing on reality.
hey, lies, damn lies, and statistics.
What was it? You don't do polls because polls are used to push an opinion, not generate one, not measure one. The Dutch are the real Jews, to be honest. Swamp Jews. That I have no idea what the context is for this, but Luxelex is having a bit of a moment there.
No, I think it's the bit above it, maybe.
Oh, maybe you need Welsh representation. Oh, redheads are the real Jews. Well, you can't.
Just try and do a very bad Welsh accent as well, because again, it'll sound like my previous one.
You're from Wales.
I'm from Wales. Aye, no, that's Scottish.
Aye. Dear God, man. Redheads are the. You can't put Halo quotes around Jews. Like that completely invalidates the reason for the Halo quotes. Get yourself in gear, Avinash. Come on now. The exhibition invites guests. Oh, grief. The exhibition invites guests to collect fake dollar bills in the money gap room.
Of course.
Of course. Because that's how we get our extra money, of course. You are actually paid the same amount of money for the same job, and then at the end of the day, you just get given an extra check for being a man.
Of course, that's exactly how it works.
Rock climb the corporate climb, because that's definitely a gendered issue. Not. And cross a ball pit of breasts called the Sea of Objectification. Okay.
So wait, that's what it was. That was signifying a sea of objectification.
I'm just going to say. Let's see what we've got here.
Edward Suzanne.
There was something I can't see it here. Let me see. Yeah, here we go. Like this group here. This is this thing. Why middle-aged mums are swooning over Edward Cullen or whatever it was, James Patterson. Because I remember seeing this a few years ago.
Yes.
Now imagine it the exact same way, but with a load of middle-aged men saying Twilight Dad staring at Bella or whatever her name was with that kind of intensity right there.
Yeah, that's really creepy.
That's very creepy. Very creepy. Just because like the objectification takes a different form or it's more tolerated within the male domain does not mean in any way that the objectification of men doesn't happen. And
fact I learned about Twilight the other week actually was 50 Shades of Grey is actually a Twilight fan fiction with the names replaced.
What is?
50 Shades of Grey.
Oh, really? Why is that?
Yes.
What
they literally got rid of all the vampire stuff and the werewolf stuff and just changed the names, and it's still the Twilight fan fiction.
That sounds about right.
Yeah, I was like, that makes a lot of sense.
I don't know. It's just the story of an abusive relationship in both cases, so I'm not really interested. I can't say. I think I picked up 50 Shades of Grey once off a desk in a library to put it back on the shelf. But apart from that, I've never touched the thing.
I got it from my grandmother as a Christmas present.
Oh,
got high blood pressure as well.
She certainly did after reading that. Yeah. 50 Shades is awful. I mean, not just in terms of the fact that the relationship between Christian Grey and whatever the woman is literally a story of abuse, but with money involved. But apparently the actual acts within it are very, very dangerous and wouldn't even be done by the BDSM community, who had to release statements telling people or warning them off doing certain things in certain ways because you're going to cause yourself serious damage in the places you don't want it, as opposed to the places that you do. I mean, just pure degeneracy.
Yes.
Complete, like,
remember, kids, please do not do what things happen in books.
Tensler says, which character is the abusive one? Both of them are as bad as each other, as far as I'm aware, but I haven't read enough of the story to care. Rose of Dawn saying, it's a terrible representation of a BDSM relationship and it's just cringe. I mean, that just sounds like the voice of experience there. Clearly, Rose is into that kind of BDSM kink, and it's just terrified that her community will be misrepresented. Joan Overton, it substituted erotica for showy aesthetics, so I'm told. Not surprised in the slightest. But there we go. The sea of objectification sounds quite fun. That's what someone said earlier. That was quite funny. It would be nice to be objectified for a day, you know. Shaw and her team didn't set out to make a pop-up museum, apparently. But it all started this spring when she launched the Lady Factory, a one-night pop-up. So it was a pop-up. It was just centered around women's issues for Women's Day. Such a success, having been called the woke girls version of the pop-up museum. I mean, it's just the cringe increases as we go on. It has to be said. We'll keep going with it. She decided to continue it on a larger scale and for a longer period of time, but still within the context of a selfie museum. I don't know why. Like, whenever I hear selfie museum, I think that it's actually a museum of selfies, and then I think, I think just how sad that is.
No, I mean, it'd be like kind of like the National Portrait Gallery, but with selfies.
But for people who are very sad.
It depends. There could be some really good ones.
Let me see. The GTA spoof of 50 Shades of Grey was brilliant. I used to think I wanted a career. All I really wanted was a millionaire to buy me diamonds and piss on me. Thanks for that, silly sailor. The woke girls, blah, 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 blah. We wanted to turn this trend on its head, this trend that neither of us have ever heard of. These places exist for no other reason than to take pictures with the backdrop of the pop-up for the place. It's a one-dimensional vanity exercise. We find tension in putting something with substance, albeit not much of it, in that backdrop and creating a narrative based on fake, not fake, just misleading statistics that insinuates gender bias, doesn't demonstrate it. Thank you very much. It was partly inspired by the recent wave of Me Too, Time's Up, and the Women's March, with women banding together to speak out in this moment. Yeah, it's definitely all 5% of you. 7%, wasn't it? Of women who identify as feminist.
Yeah.
It is very resonant. Let me see. Is she reveling in all the real money she's pulling in from the fake money she's pouring down? Shaw and her team built the exhibits to jazz up statistics. It sounds like they're fiddling them, to be honest.
Jazz up.
In 2016, it was reported that women were paid 20% less than men for doing the same jobs, while the number of female CEOs is at an all-time high of 32. It's just 6.4%. Although, interestingly, if you look at the actual statistics, those female CEOs which do make it are paid, on average, I think 14% more.
If they are of a certain age, yes.
I think it's just a broad trend across the female CEOs, but again, it's such a small sample size because
you can twist the statistics either way. Like,
I imagine
it's so weird.
I imagine it flips most years. It'll change dependent on the progress of the companies that they're employed in. So, packaging this content in a colorful masquerade. But my point is that they're using a misleading statistic.
It is the Guardian. I wouldn't expect any less.
Well, no, because the statistic, I'm sure, comes from the official statistics, but they're
no, but I mean, like, the twisting of it, I meant.
Yeah, sure. But if they can use a misleading statistic, I will use the exact same branch of their own statistics to just say, what you're saying is rubbish, honey. Packaging this content into a colorful masquerade is not normally how feminist conversations look. No, normally it's a lot of pointing fingers and pussy hats. She said, we're presenting something that is highly stylized, but is underpinned with how we are not paid equally, but you are, which is more true for women of color, but it's not, or how we're treated as objects. Like, a woman is not paid less for the same job as a man. Women are on average. So there you go. Women revel in posting their ideas with their photos. I mean, generally society itself is quite visual. So I don't know where she gets off basically qualifying that to women.
We just need to remove everyone's eyes. It's the only solution.
It's the only... Everyone will work in Braille.
It's the only thing I can see that could have solved the problem.
I'm curious now. I have to search just to see if it's a real thing.
What?
Is there such a thing as a braille selfie?
Yes, go for the Helen Keller selfie. That'd be the best one.
Oh dear, Sleffy I've put in there, but unfortunately,
best.
Oh dear. Let me see. We're not diminishing by making these issues more playful with pink painted sets, gendered colours, rubbish. You'll be eaten alive by your peers, and plastic toy-like accessories. You could be easily misread the wrong way. Not diminishing the import of the issues, raising them in part to a wider, partially unengaged audience. Although I think, to be perfectly honest, most of them will go just because it's funny to take a selfie with a, in a hall filled with, fake breasts.
That's objectifying those breasts.
Lux et Lex. Whenever Not So Obvious says honey, I imagine that painted nails emoji. I don't know the painted nails emoji, so I can't really comment. I mean, pop-up museums were already gay, says the show comment man, but this is really gay. Joan Everton, so when are we allowed to acknowledge the fact that Me Too is basically just a pack of attack dogs? I mean, we already can do it. This is a not so safe space, so we're all good. We're all good. For what is Helen Keller actually known, beyond being blind, of course? Helen Keller did a lot, actually.
She was deaf, blind, a lot of political activism.
Yeah.
She was also a communist.
Yes, she was. She had a weird. She did do a lot to do with before she joined the socialists. She did something. She was like well known for having overcome the her condition. There you go. First deafblind to earn a Bachelor of Arts degree.
It is pretty impressive that she was able to actually speak.
Yeah, very impressive.
Very impressive.
I believe. I don't know. Early, yeah.
And actually write. Like, she can actually write a name and such.
Yes. She at 19 months old, she contracted it, which left her deaf and blind. She was able to communicate. Oh, because she used signs to communicate. And she had more than 60 signs to communicate with her family. She passed through many obstacles and learned to live with her disabilities and could tell which person was walking from the vibrations of their footsteps. Helen Keller is Daredevil, the communist Daredevil. Clearly she was doing fine and she would have gone on to fight crime, but instead she perpetuated it by becoming a member of the Socialist Party, which reduced her brain cells down to 5. So unfortunately, we've been denied the Daredevil we wanted. Communist. How appropriate that she was deafblind. Yeah, maybe she just didn't see or hear the atrocities of communism. Although, to be fair, I can't blame her for necessarily looking at it, because she was. Oh, she died in 1968. Never mind. I thought she died in 1880, and I was going, no. She's as bad as the rest of them. Never mind. She can't claim ignorance. She was there in the thick of all.
Well, it's not her form of socialism. You got to remember that.
Oh, it never is. Or anti-militarism. Like, I don't know. When I was in the military, I had basically we had a speaker come in who was a Jewish girl who had been sent from where she was in Germany in the 40s to a Quaker colony in America. And she'd basically been raised with this like non-aggression thing, going to the extent of like absolute maximum. So would never strike anyone, would rather die, etc. And that sort of thing. And she says that her solution was, you need to identify these people before they get into power and make sure they never get into power. And that's the way that you stop it. And I'm going, well, the next form of communism and so on and so forth, like hides behind, like whatever dictator it is, hides behind moral language, especially when they take on any special powers to to, sort of manipulate the population until it's too late. So the idea of being able to spot these people is very, very difficult.
Right. If your system requires having just the right people in power, your system's crap.
Yes, I would agree.
Because this is kind of one of the kind of good systems that we have with ours. Even though it is so corrupt, it's good because of it. Because in a sense, that way, because our system actually handle it. It's not bothered by the actual people involved. So welcome, Britisher.
Good evening. How are we doing?
Good evening, sir.
I thought I'd sneak in.
A pleasure for you.
And hope that the teacher doesn't notice I'm late.
I get the ruler out immediately. Wrap across the knuckles, sir. If you had knuckles anymore. How are you this evening?
Well, somewhat rushed. Real life is obviously trying to keep me from the internet. But it could be worse. I could be Alex Jones.
Oh, yes. He's been surgically removed from the internet, hasn't he?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. There's been a conspiracy against him. How ironic.
Well, yes, I mean, in that regard, it almost kind of confirms there being a conspiracy if they actually all at the same time decide to take him off. Does it not?
Yeah. It's a bit funny.
Shall we see what the woke take of The Guardian is on this?
Spotify as well. That's 4 companies.
He's been Facebook, Apple, YouTube, and Spotify have banned Infowars Alex Jones. I'll crack down on US conspiracy theorists for promoting violence and hate speech. Promoting, not inciting. What they consider to be violence, also, I doubt very much is violence, and hate speech, who knows? Let's have a look. All but one of the major content platforms. Which is the one? Is that Twitter? Oh, no, he's been removed from Twitter as well, I swear. Is he not?
I'm trying to think what the major platform that'd be.
I have no idea.
I could only imagine it being Twitter.
It must be. Anyway.
MySpace?
Yes, Vimeo.
Yeah, it's pretty good actually, but it's just dead.
Yeah, Rosa Dawn says he's still on Twitter. Well, have they just stopped him listening to music on Spotify? No, I think he had a podcast on Spotify, and that's why. Facebook unpublished 4 pages run by Jones for repeated violations of community standards. YouTube terminated him over him repeatedly appearing in videos, despite being subject to a 90-day ban. I don't know why they banned him. And Spotify removed the entirety of one of his podcasts. Okay, so I assume that's just every episode of that podcast for hate content. Yay!
What I don't understand is he's been doing this for how long? Like 15 years?
And they've only just discovered, yes.
And they've only just said, no, we don't like it. I'm like, regardless of your views, he's been doing the same stuff for a long time.
Oh, dear.
Juicy Blue. Well, I mean, as such, if we're really honest, this is being done to Alex Jones not because of his opinions.
Oh, yeah, of course.
He's being made an example of.
But what I mean is, if you are someone who has a channel with 20 subscribers and you are on there ranting like Alex Jones, do you get taken down? No. You get taken down if you're Alex Jones because you've got a very big channel. So effectively, it is the success of what Alex Jones is doing, which is being punished here.
Yes, because what they're doing is saying, well, I assume that the majority of the reason they do it is because of this crackdown on fake news that they all seem to be doing at the moment, defining fake news however they want. And also the fact that they don't trust people to make up their minds over what fake news is, or that other companies will step in to debunk him, which I think is ludicrous because sunlight is naturally the best disinfectant, and he will end up being pushed to his own website, and I doubt very much that he will take massive hits from this. He may even grow from the publicity, but who knows?
He's now too dangerous for YouTube.
It's sort of a badge, an accolade, really.
Precisely.
Let me see. Facebook removed the Alex Jones channel page, Alex Jones page, Infowars, and Infowars Nightly News, and comes after the social network imposed a 30-day ban on him for his role in posting violating content to these pages. Do people read it and they just go, "My eyes, I've been violated." Following his suspension, a Facebook spokesman said, more content from the same pages has been reported to us. That doesn't mean that it's great. We have taken down for glorifying violence. Interesting. I bet they haven't taken down much Antifa stuff, though, which violates our graphic violence policy. And using dehumanizing language to describe people who are transgender. That's very subjective, as I'm sure Rose of Dawn can attest. She works in the transgender lobby. Muslims and immigrants. Dehumanizing language to Muslims and immigrants. It's like, well, is he wrong though? Like, it's not dehumanizing to describe them as they are, and it's not, and to deny the side of humans that can be violent and debased and incorrect and needs to be curtailed and accounted for when allowing people from less developed nations into your country. I just don't see that as being dehumanizing.
It's not just that, it's just the word immigrants as well, which can mean anything as well. It's not just like, oh, illegal immigrants or immigrants from a certain place, just immigrants. Which, again, I don't know Alex Jones's view on all of this. I don't actually watch his content, to be honest with you.
Hardly at all. I don't particularly like his presenting style, but
yes.
I obviously know him from the memes. One interesting thing I was thinking about with regards to this is, like, you think about something like prohibition, right? It didn't work at all. No. And the same thing is true in prohibition of ideas. It doesn't work. It is proven to have not worked. It's like China tried to ban Christianity about 20 years ago. And in response, they had the fastest growth of Christians across the country that they had seen in the entirety of the history of the nation, to the point where they're growing at something like 400,000 a week or something now. And you just go, that's because they did, to the point where they panicked because they were getting this massive explosion of Christians, and now allow them, provided they replace pictures of Jesus in churches with pictures of their leader, you know.
Yeah, it is kind of the oh, you told me to do something, not do something, I'm going to do it fact. And also, if it's made illegal, if you're going to do it anyway, why don't you just do the hard stuff? Like that's when they did the prohibition in America, it turned a nation of beer drinkers into liquor drinkers.
Yes,
because they thought if they're going to get drunk, oh, just go for the hard stuff
and get pissed really quickly.
Yeah.
I know certainly for a fact that you know, if you tell someone that they can't speak on an issue and that their ideas are wrong, but you don't want to hear them, you're not going to give them a platform, that doesn't change their mind. It just makes them go, what a closed-minded person, I'm right and they're an idiot. And then you go off and you try and find some people who will talk to you, and you will find people who will talk to you. And then you'll create a counterculture, and that's the way that goes. So there you go.
But I think the theory that states have, or people of authority, is that effectively, yes, they understand that the other side will not suddenly be silenced, but they see it as denying that side the ability to prosper. So effectively, you've got two flower pots, and in both of them is a rose, but one of them has got soil in, possibly even with some fertilizer and whatever, and the other has got sort of a collection of sand and grit. So you know that both plants will more than likely still keep going, but you are effectively encouraging one plant to grow, and you're kind of encouraging the other one to wither.
I would counteract that analogy somewhat by saying that the two roses are sentient, that both had soil, and then one had grit poured in it, and the rose that had grit poured in it got very angry at the person who poured the grit in it, and therefore was straining to grow as fast as possible. And that doesn't mean that it can grow as fast as the other one, but it means that by no means is it going to roll over and wither.
I mean, the reason I use that particular example is because there is a kind of favorite sentence to look out for whenever any kind of censorial law is passed in this country in particular, and that is sending a message to society.
Oh, really?
I would just urge everybody to look for that particular line, because it's one which Conservative and Labour Party governments will use. We're passing this law in order to send a message to society.
Yes, your message, which is definitely not heavily biased one way or the other, is it?
Well, yes, but it's also, it's in effect an admission of open manipulation.
Yes.
But it also shows that you are not reflecting the views of present society, which is a strange thing for a democratic nation to do.
Very strange.
Instead, what you are seeking to do is, as they would word it, apply leadership and take society where it is to the sunlit uplands of a better future.
It's for the greater good. The greater good.
The greater
in a way,
good.
that is very much their way of thinking. So they see it as encouraging better ideas and discouraging, not so good ideas. And in a way, that attitude seems very much to have taken hold in the corporate world.
Perhaps. Yes, it beggars belief, because there are so many instances in history where this has failed to work. You would think that they would get the idea, but I don't think it's one of these things that, in particular, politicians actually examine very often about their own history. Of course, history being a dirty word nowadays as well.
The reason as to why, I was speaking to this with my friend earlier, is we were kind of thinking, he was kind of saying, oh, why do you think they're banning it? Do you think they're afraid of them? And I'm like, they're not afraid of those people. They're disgusted by them. That's why they ban them. Disgust and fear are completely different emotions.
Yeah.
And I know it sounds daft, but people usually get them confused, which is kind of weird. And I apologize. Please do not take me out of context on this analogy I'll use. But like, for instance, again, Hitler was not afraid of the Jews. He was disgusted by them.
Yes.
And it was it's a different visceral emotion.
So I don't know whether, I think he was disgusted, and then he used the language of fear,
yes,
to further his end. And disgust, sensitivity is a major. I mean, it's one of the big contributing factors to a personality. Is disgust, sensitivity. I can't remember which of the big 5 personality traits.
It's also one of like the moral foundations as well. If you use for like Jonathan Haidt's work.
Don't you AA me? That's fine. Oh dear, I could reveal what AA looks like. Actually, he sent me.
Yes, I could too. I could reveal his name and such, but I won't do.
He sent me some exciting photos of him going away on holiday recently. But I won't do that.
Holiday snaps of AA. I wonder what that would be like.
I know, it's hilarious. He's a good guy. The Guardian understands that the rationale for Jones's ban was his habit of appearing in live streams hosted on other channels despite being subjected to a 90-day ban. Again, they're not saying what that 90-day ban is. They're saying that this surgical removal is for him violating the bans he was already under, that were not related to his conspiracy side of things, apparently. Apple removed Jones from its podcast directory. The timing of Facebook's announcement was unusual, confirming the ban at 3 a.m.
Well, I find that strange what you just read out there, because I was under the understanding, from something I had previously read, that Jones was getting around the ban by using another channel of his. Now what you're saying here in The Guardian is that that he was basically appearing on other people's channels.
As a guest, yes.
So now a ban, so a community strike by YouTube is henceforth to be interpreted not only as we are basically disabling your channel from live streaming, but you're also not allowed to be a guest on someone else's live stream.
Yeah, you can't talk about it.
That's bizarre.
I think so. They're trying to ban him from YouTube, not just his show. So that is even weirder. An individual they're trying to ban.
Silly Sailor says 3 a.m. where it's 3 a.m. local, so I assume that's
Murica.
Yeah, Murica, because they would say British time otherwise. Jones, who is being sued for claiming that the Sandy Hook shooting was a hoax.
Which is ridiculous.
It is ridiculous.
The fact that he's being sued.
Yes, I mean, it's ridiculous.
Because,
What do you sue over? Like, how many people are going to believe that?
So basically, his views are ridiculous, granted. But since when is having ridiculous views illegal?
Not only that, when is having ridiculous views a culpable offence
Yes.
that you can be charged real money over? One sense is a cash grab. Apple does not host podcasts. It's simply a list of links to podcasts hosted on independent servers. But they removed all of his shows from Apple Podcasts, save for one, which is still present. Publishing platforms have faced strong pressure to take action against him. Apple does not tolerate hate speech, clear guidelines, blah, 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 blah. An Apple spokesperson told BuzzFeed News, now that's an oxymoronic statement if ever I heard one, which first reported the removal. Oh, you know it's sad when BuzzFeed beats all the major news to the punch, isn't it?
Wow.
Podcasts that violate hate speech guidelines are removed from our directory, making them no longer searchable or available for download or streaming. We believe in representing a wide range of views within the left, so long as people are respectful to those with differing opinions.
I find it funny how you said that BuzzFeed beat them, because it kind of reminds me of the fact that actually Alex Jones once did beat everyone to the punch when it came to the news, because we're all so set up to completely disbelieve anything the man says. But if you remember, he was the man who actually was saying Hillary Clinton is ill.
Oh yes, he has he has absolutely golden nuggets hidden amongst.
And nobody believed him at the time because it was the boy who cried wolf. No, everyone said, "Oh, here he goes again." And then she
like those things, like the meme about turning the frogs gay. That is technically true.
Yes.
Which is kind of hilarious, but it's like, no, actually, no, that technically happened in the fact the frogs turned them to different sex, to turn them to different, because they're hermaphrodites already. But
yes, I believe, I remember Sargon doing a piece on that one. Yes.
That's so funny. So let's go and says, when has ridiculous views been a chargeable offence? One word, Britain. Also Germany, Thailand, China, and Venezuela. Oh dear.
Grouping those together countries is a little bit weird.
Oh, I suppose. It's just once he's rattling them off the top of his head.
At least we do not have the re-educational facilities yet, like Venezuela has.
Oh, goodness me.
Well, I mean, who knows? That might be the next step.
Oh,
if Alex Jones is willing to visit a re-education seminar, then they might allow him back on.
I swear, he would go to that seminar and receive a Class A lobotomy, if you will.
Yes, that's what
they'll go, and he'll be like, and now we cut back to Alex Jones, and it's just a man dribbling.
That's what they did in Eastern Germany with dissidents. That they simply couldn't, not only could they not silence them, but they simply just couldn't get them to play ball. Whereas with most of them, you kind of lock them up for a long time or you torture them a bit, and they basically fall silent. But with some others, they had some real problems. So what to do with them?
Yeah.
And there was a program overseen by the wife of the dictator. It's funny how sometimes it's the women who have got that all the more sadistic streak, if you know what I mean.
Yes.
And yes, the entire program was lobotomizing people.
That's
and terrifying. I remember seeing, this was shortly after the wall had come down, seeing a documentary where they showed some of these operations happening, and they showed the procedure to a surgeon, a leading surgeon in the country, and he just turned white. And they were literally, I'm using the word literally correctly here, folks.
It's very brave of you.
Literally using a power drill. So basically they opened up your skull and used a power drill to drill into your brain.
Have a bit of a scramble around.
Do you actually do that in actual brain surgery as well?
I believe that,
but I bet it wouldn't be the special what they'd be using. Yeah. This would be just like, I'll get down from the hardware store and use that.
Precisely.
Oh good God. That's just
the reason they were doing this was because afterwards they could sew the person all back up again, and he would be a dribbling moron, and that would prove their point. Because of course, under communism, people who didn't toe the official line were mentally ill. So this was effectively their way of proving, well, there you see, we're now in the latter stages of his mental illness. We've told you all along he has got a screw loose.
The Harry Channel says that's how you let the bad ideas escape. Drill a hole into the head.
Well, yes, but as in this particular case, they literally opened up the skull and then used a power drill, just as you said, like something from the hardware store.
I think the only thing
drill a few holes in.
The only thing I can think of that would be worse is one of those hand-powered egg whisks.
Yes, we're in that territory. Yes.
Rattling around there.
And I just remember the reaction of the surgeon. I mean, he went white with rage, and then just said he wanted the names of the surgeons who had been involved there, and that he just wanted to make sure that none of them ever worked again.
It's horrendous. I agree. Goodness me! Before you arrived, Patricia, did you catch any of the conversation?
No, I'm afraid I was sort of running hither and thither.
We were talking about a pop-up museum that has arrived in San Francisco, demonstrating all these women's issues that have been thoroughly debunked, but they still want to make a thing about.
Well, I mean, you need a museum for good ideas.
It's a pop-up selfie museum, including, if I go back, the collecting fake dollar bills in the Money Gap room, rock climbing the corporate climb, and crossing a ball pit full of breasts called the Sea of Objectification, which looks like this.
Yes. I like the rock climbing the corporate ladder or whatever.
Oh, it's very
because it just makes you think there, because they're using rock climbing as the analogy. But why aren't there as many female rock climbers as there are male rock climbers? Is the one question that immediately springs to mind. And shouldn't one do something about it?
Rock climbing is actually relatively popular around women, so I don't know.
Certainly, thing is, when they do like corporate events, like corporate companies, and they do like events for their employees, a lot of them actually do rock climbing. So are they what are they trying to signify there?
I have no idea. Clearly, it's to enforce the male space on rock climbing, and as in general.
Of course.
Anyway, so the whole point of this is they wanted to bring their feminist ideals to a younger audience, as they are declining art museum attendees for millennial-aged museum goers who might discover art instead on Instagram and Pinterest. Especially with the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York City's entrance fee hike for all non-New Yorkers, engaging youth has continued to be a challenge, which is why museums are turning to special hashtags and phone charging stations. There are "The Future is Female" t-shirts at shopping malls. But Shaw wants to dig deeper beyond the pink it and shrink it trend. What on earth is the pink it and shrink it trend?
I was just thinking the same thing.
Let's see what the Washington Post is saying on this. Shrink it. Oh, a history of advertisers missing the mark with women. I see. Small guns, small razors, small bottles, small beers, and then putting pink on it. And that sort of thing. I assume that's what it's referring to. Also, the future is female. I mean, I find that to be also just a bizarre thing to push as well. Like, the past is also female.
Yeah, it seems to be something that doesn't quite have a grasp on biology.
No, it really doesn't. Unless you want to make men like some sort of serf class who do all the menial work. Women will run the rest.
Once you have detoxified masculinity, who knows where we end up?
Oh, who knows? In the corporate climb room, which is focused around how few women...
I like it that she's climbing in heels.
Of course. Again...
She's empowered to do it.
She has been empowered to do it by the ludicrously easy wall and the heels. And I just go, if that's not a description of the now much easier climb to the top, then men have it due to all the extra... I think it was something like... if you wanted to be a woman in sport and you wanted a scholarship, you have 50 times more scholarships than a man, and the average woman has 2.5 times more scholarships than a man available to her for whatever course she wants to do. So To me, it's just a bit ridiculous anyway to keep pushing this one. It's
well, there are more women going to university than men anyway.
About 63% of university attendees are women, and although again they dominate the wrong types of degrees for the higher paying jobs.
Oh yes, the wrong types.
Well, if you want a career which is going to earn you money, then yes.
Yes, just
they tend to go to creative stuff, and therefore,
as the Americans call liberal arts. Is that correct?
I guess. Yeah, I think so.
Again, I'm not particularly sure on that American lingo.
Here we go. The moneymaker room is filled with. Oh no, here we go. Yes, the few women are at the upper ranks of management. When one climbs to the top of the pink wall, nothing special awaits climbers. We're still clawing our way to get up there, to create a way to get to the top. We're trying to mirror reality as we see it today.
Nice
metaphor. Can I just point something out here?
Sure.
Given one of the other gripes they were just explaining, why is that particular wall pink?
Yes, I know they were talking about earlier in the article that they've pinkified everything, and I was going, oh, you're going to get torn apart by the progressives there. But talking about clawing their way to the top, to get to the top, and there not being anything there for them is actually sort of representative of reality for everyone who goes to the top of the corporate ladder. What awaits you at the top of the corporate ladder? Too much time working and not enough time to enjoy your wealth. So much time, there's nothing exciting. You don't reach a certain point, and then your 80-hour work week becomes 5 hours of checking in every so often, and then, sitting at a desk with a phone call, watching films on, your TV in your big corner office. You just
that's not even fun anyway.
You keep working. The moneymaker room is filled with fake dollar bills and a fan so that the money blows around like a tornado, which is meant to tap into the wage gap. Yes. Have you been to the man money tornado? That's have you visited it this week, Britisher? You need to pick up your checks.
Well, I just turn up once a week in order to get my check and new instructions on how to kind of, by the patriarchy as to how to keep women down.
Yes, this week it was beat your wives, I believe. I don't know why. But we don't question the patriarchy. We just are beholden to it.
Women is this money pit thing like the Crystal Maze? Where you have all of the stuff coming up.
Yeah, no, it is.
It's not got gold things. Oh god, the Crystal Maze was great.
Not enough money to go around. That's what it is. Yeah. Women don't hit their peak earning potential until we're well into our careers. Neither do men. Women retire with little money because they spend 90% more than men do on average. Many grow up with, that's the man's thing to do. I've been told that that's the man's thing to do by more women than I have any man. Women live longer than men. Yes, because men are doing all the dangerous jobs. Sorry, I could go on all day. This financial conversation is what women have been left out of. Or go work on an oil rig, honey, and you'll earn that 350k a year. But don't be surprised if you lose a few fingers. There we go. The ballroom of breasts, called the Sea of Objectification, has been nicknamed the Tit Pit. But that is beside the point. And this again brings home what I was saying earlier about the fact that this entire sort of attraction is going to do absolutely nothing for their memory, for their message. But it is going to inspire a lot of millennials to come in and get a picture with the Tit Pit for a laugh. It's provocative to have a pit full of breasts, as it can come off as tone deaf. Is this what we're saying what women are? Merely a stack of breasts? Asked Shaw. This is the antithesis of what we are. Yep. You're definitely nothing to do with your biological self. Nothing at all. We're saying society treats us like anatomical objects, playthings, non-real beings with agency. Have you seen how actors are treated? I mean, in terms of the deference of the general population. Have you seen what loose women say? You know?
I try not to watch Loose Women.
I don't watch it, but I know what they say because occasionally it comes up on a feminist cringe compilation that stumbles into my recommended.
I try not to watch those either.
Oh, bless. It's probably
I
a good
try
thing.
not to. I said I don't.
It's just, it's appalling. Zersitzor says, I've mainly heard that's the man's thing to do when it came to menial work around a house or car. My father has been renovating the house for over 15 years now. I hope he's doing well. There we go. We may need to consider lobotomies with drills, perhaps. The women versus men conversation is better served in Asian communities where traditional gender roles are still very prevalent. Maybe. I don't know too much about the Asian community, so to be honest.
And also Asia's a bit broad.
Yeah, also very broad. Yeah. The title of the exhibition is vague, but that seems to be the point because it's not saying very much at all. That lady thing, which is a bit sarcastic and references a kind of ignorance by its creators, I would argue. That's how men would talk about this if they didn't understand it. Oh, you know, that lady thing. It captures the microbias and microaggression. Microaggression. We all feel in certain spaces it's dismissive. It's not dismissive. We counter with facts, and then you're dismissive of those facts. So there you go.
Then again, I would actually categorize my attitude towards this whole thing as dismissive. I mean,
absolutely. But we've been.
What I mean is, if you're not dismissive of it, I mean, it would mean you would be taking it seriously.
Yes, and you can't.
And I cannot see how one could possibly seek to take it seriously and analyze it. Oh, I like it that in the tit pit, as they call it, they've not just got white breasts. In the,
oh no, there are all many colors.
So, yeah, it's an intersectional tit pit.
Or they're just trying to be more like a normal ball pit. We have multiple colours, but in this case, they have to be skin coloured. So they thought, you know what? You can't have blue breasts now, can you? Otherwise, something gone wrong.
I don't know. There's certainly a community of people who love autoerotic asphyxiation, and I'm sure they turn blue from time to time.
Once in a while, they find a Tory MP of that kind. Dead on the table with an apple in his mouth, don't they?
Or perhaps a particularly Braveheart-esque female. And they get eviscerated before they even reach the pit. So there you go.
Do they have male breasts to represent transgenders?
No, because those men are now women or trans.
Yeah. No. They mean the trans women.
Yes.
Do they represent their breasts? Okay, I'm just confused by the topic. I really don't know.
Well, it depends. If they're trans men, then it could be all the mastectomy breasts. Come on.
Oh God, don't let me think about that.
Dear.
Shall we go to the next topic?
Clement Down says, "Strangle me, daddy." Okay, I don't know why I read that. On to the next topic. Britain's drinking less tea and eating more junk food, new data says. It's our worst nightmare coming to fruition, Britisher, one of them. The tea.
Well, I think now we're beginning to see why standards are slipping.
Of course, it's purely the tea. Tea was keeping us all on a level. Although interestingly,
if we continue going like this, we'll soon be like Americans.
Don't push me there.
We'll just be shouting at each other instead of normal conversation in the manner in which Alec Jones converses.
What was that? I'm sure the sorry, I was read an article actually, interestingly, about the trade to Britain and what caused us to be sort of hyper productive through the Industrial Revolution, etc., etc. And a lot of it was a lot of commercial access to narcotics, drugs, tea as stimulant, and cigarettes. So, like the primary ones, refined sugar, tea, and nicotine were the primary drivers of the British Empire.
Because those three go together very well.
Well, they were the three prime stimulants. That
not the opium?
Access. It could also have been opium, although isn't that supposed to mellow you out more than stimulate you? Don't know much about it myself.
I don't, yeah, it does to me, yeah.
Let me see.
It is more of a painkiller and relax.
Didn't Bob Newhart do a sort of a wonderful bit about tobacco? Where, you know, his shtick was kind of to do sort of like a fake phone call where you only hear one half of the phone call and it just left to your imagination.
Oh, right.
And he was basically it was supposed to be set in the past, and he had Raleigh calling from America, to tell him about his discoveries. And I think he sort of says, well, we don't mind that a potato, we can do something, we can use that. And he said, well, what have you found? Tobacco. What's that? Huh. Leaves.
Yeah.
Dried leaves. I hate to disappoint you here, but we have quite a few dried leaves in autumn over here. It's just
yes.
Beauty of it is just something that we all take for granted. How would you ever explain it to someone who had never heard of it in his life?
How would you sell or market tobacco?
So basically, how did anybody ever convince the Europeans that rolling up dried leaves and then setting them on fire while you've got them in your mouth would be a good idea?
Well, do you know what? I actually may know the answer to this question.
Go ahead.
Basically, the earliest instance, I believe, of smoking being recorded in the UK, certainly, used to be off of vessels of African, with African slaves on board, or African ship workers who would breathe the smoke through the mouth, and they used to smoke, obviously with premium grade Rizzlers to wrap them up in, but yes, they used to smoke, and so it was very much a naval thing, and it kept them awake on the long watches and that sort of thing. So it gained a reputation as a stimulant that way. Although I don't know how exactly it came to prevalence, but it was a seafarer's thing. You had a sailor mouth and the sailor's smoke, as it were, you might say.
Yeah.
So, and then it spread to the Royal Navy, and then onwards from there to high society, I presume, through the officer class. And that's the way it works. But it used to be a
very weird thing when you think about it. The idea that, okay, you know what, I'm just going to have some of this plant.
I've not
stick and then smoke it.
Well, it's one of those. It's one of those weird things where you see who was the first person to look at a beehive and say, "I know those bastards are hiding something sweet and tasty,"
Or the thing is, you know what, that thing that comes out of chicken's bum, that'll make a good meal.
Oh yes, eggs.
I think it's if you have to go to great lengths, if it's something like an egg, you sort of think, okay, well, someone might crack that open. They might be next to a campfire. It might get, cooked that way. But when it's a matter of something having to go through several stages before it is in any way usable, that's when you can't help but wonder. Because it's not as if tobacco, you can just pick it off the plant and then do something with it.
Oh no, it's got to be dried, rolled, and then stored. In the same way that you wonder how people came up with things like complex alloys and that sort of thing.
Well, it's not even that. Like, even if you go keeping on the drugs matter, making cocaine is really difficult.
Yes, indeed. Yes,
like, extremely difficult. How the hell can you make that accidentally?
Joe Neverton says, when you think about the process of making it and all its complexities, who created bread? The idea of doughs and that sort of thing.
No, I think I know this. It wasn't actually they made bread first. They made beer first.
I mean, you're welcome to expand on this.
Yeah, so beer is actually one of the hypotheses about civilization is when we wanted to do agriculture, the reason why we did it was to make beer. And the reason is that when you've got the beer, you need to get the yeast and such. And when you brew beer, you just get the grains. And I actually do brew my beer. I've been drinking it tonight. It's very good stuff. And so they thought they'd do that. And if you add it to more grains, you can usually get you have like it's kind of like the spent grain afterwards. And you can usually bake with that as well. It's not very nice, but you can cook it with it. So if you do that eventually, you realize, I can make bread out of this. That's one hypothesis, at least.
That's a hypothesis.
It's a hypothesis, no proof, because clearly it's thousands before recorded history.
I think it's more than likely that it would be flatbreads that one then effectively found a way. Basically that by letting the stuff lie around too long, that you basically got natural yeast.
But it's even before that. You've got to get the flour.
Yes,
you
but
can grind that down.
Oh,
At least
just
with
to,
like beer, you don't actually have to grind it down exactly.
just to briefly jump back to tobacco, Silly Sailor says, wasn't tobacco brewed like tea before it was smoked? And certainly there's a case for chewing tobacco as well, I'm sure, in the case of the development of that.
No, I think the Indians already smoked tobacco in pipes, so that they were already well into it. I don't think they necessarily rolled cigars out of it, if you know what I mean.
I didn't know you were in India around that period, but sure, I could have sworn you were in the West Indies.
No, when I'm talking of Indians, I mean what some folk call the Native Americans.
Sure.
And I still refer to as Indians.
The Red Indians.
Yes.
Is that too offensive nowadays to say? Or
well, I can well imagine that somebody somewhere just had a
bit of a fit.
Had some kind of fit over it. But no, I mean, to me, it's Indians, and I don't even believe that they themselves that much object to the term.
No, I think
one
they
of those
actually
things
prefer
where
it.
people feel offence on their behalf. And
Silly Sailor wants to hit you around the head with his wrench and say, I meant that the Indians brewed it before they started smoking it.
No.
Okay.
So,
I shall take his word. He's quite a knowledgeable fellow, Silly Sailor. So I wouldn't want to disagree with him offhand. I would just like to know where from where he knows that.
We've just lost 6 people who were terribly offended by your use of the term Red Indians. So there you go. Thanks for that. We shall wait for Silly Sailor's response, and that will be that. Zertzazor says, it just struck me how weirdly communal this small chat is. It reminds me of chat rooms during Internet 1.0 times. Well, I think part of it, Zertzazor, is we try and interact with the chat a lot more than a lot of other channels do. It's certainly in pre-super chat, and even when I get super chat, I intend to interact to a good degree with the chat as well. So I'm not going to become silent to the chat and only accept it when people pay me the shekels. So I think it's good.
I do need to ask: is Zerzetzer, as you're pronouncing it, is that German with an O thrown in at the end instead of an E? Because Zersetzer with an E would be a disassembler.
I have no idea.
So
you German-speaking heathen.
I apologize. Yes.
This is perks of a small channel. I will be opening up the Discord at some point. So and then I will be going through both the chat here and chat in Discord. Hopefully, when things are running, and then it will be a lot easier for the smaller community to get messages across, etc. That way.
I'm still so grateful that I don't even know what a Discord is.
I think you'd do well to get on it, but it's your discretion, obviously. Zertzor says, at the Britisher, that is correct. It's just a weird nickname I got at uni.
Oh, well, there you go.
Well spotted, that man. Don't shill like AA. I can only get him to respond to an extremely well-timed meme. Dear. Nobody wants to shill like AA. Have you seen his you're not on the Skype group, are you, Britisher? No, you won't have seen his holiday snaps.
No, I haven't. No.
That's been entertaining.
Passed me by.
We got the full face reveal and everything. I believe before we went off on
the academic agent is in possession of a face.
I know.
Yes,
it's shocking, really.
She's not just a real face.
And believe it or not, his eyes are not Coca-Cola cans. But
this is deeply disappointing.
That's deeply disappointing. This is why you will never do a face reveal yourself.
Iranian heritage. Do I have to expect there being a full face beard on show?
I'm not revealing anything. I'm not revealing anything.
No. He may not even be what you expect him to look like. He could look ginger for all we know.
I tell you, it's amazing what a man of his size can.
I've been told he might be wearing a pith helmet on holiday, so I'm assuming he will be there in a pith helmet, but as you say, not looking as we expected, So he will be there with a pith helmet, smoking a pipe, in dress.
I have no comment apart from the fact that
with a parasol.
The pith helmet is very much accurate.
And all of it being pink, of course.
No,
of course.
It's not pink. He's not primed for the desert heat, let's say. Before we went off on a tangent about chewing tobacco, normal tobacco, the origin of bread and beer, we were talking about current day British eating habits.
I know, it's appalling.
Weekly consumption of chips, pizza, crisps, and ready meals has soared. I think it's again part of it. But then that doesn't surprise me. Just before we even get started on the article, it doesn't surprise me at all, given that in the last 40 years, 50% of the workforce, has increased by 50%, I should say, roughly. And most people, because of the way wages have gone, due to that as well, the realisticness of people being around to make food has drastically decreased. So the upward trend, if you want to cook for yourself and make some healthier things and so on and so forth, then it's very possible. But I think most people now eat sort of what they can grab at any one point. And I think the removal of dining room etiquette and eating at consistent times of the day has also contributed to that.
Also, food is really cheap nowadays as well.
And food is very cheap, particularly, like think of ready meal pizza, which only takes like 10, 15 minutes in the oven. You just go, and that costs you £2,
Have you ever made your own pizza?
Yes, many times. It is delightful. I love doing it.
Are we talking having made your own dough?
Yes.
I do, yes.
Okay, so we're all equally posh then.
I usually just make bread all the time.
It's mainly just because the if you are going to make your own pizza, the bases on offer in shops are so appalling, and it's so cheap. It's so cheap to produce your own dough if you know what you're doing, that it's just nonsensical that you would buy like a 50p, pizza base.
Yeah, I wouldn't consider bases you buy in the shops are very much sort of a version of cardboard, are they not?
They're like scones, but horrible.
I'm glad that you used the correct pronunciation of scones. Sutskohan says, on behalf of the chat, examine the third headline on the right of your screen. A purple dildo left on Jacob Rees-Mogg's car whilst holidaying.
Why is that news?
It's a very short story. I wonder if they have the photos. Actually, I have seen this.
I would love to see the photos.
He was basically on holiday, and some leftists broke onto his estate, vandalized his walls with things like posh twat and that sort of thing, spray painted all over his and his wife's car, and stuck a big purple dildo on the front of it, and then used condoms all over the driveway, to which his housekeeper woke up to. And I just imagined that the housekeeper would have responded with something like, "Oh dear, it's going to be a long one of those days, isn't it?" What will they think of next? No, they haven't done it. Let me see what I can find on.
One can't help but feel that they more than likely will have thought that they were being terribly cutting and creative.
Oh, I imagine so. Images. Oh, they haven't. I did see one earlier, but it appears that
scroll up, because there were some spray painting things right at the top.
Yes.
There we go. Posh scum, is that it?
Yeah, that was on there. That was one of those things. Let me see if I can visit the...
Well, think of the right side. He's getting more popular.
I mean, in all the wrong circles, apparently. But let me see. Shut up. Drunken protest. Oh, yes. Mogg had the best response to this. Once again, very Moggian. He said, "It appears to be someone who can't hold their drink, and probably not Catholic. However, it's all been cleared up, so this drunken protest will not even have a short-term effect." Yes, I thought that was that. Some criminal damage. Yeah, here we are. The anarchy symbol. Politics equals death. That sort of thing. But sadly, they've removed the photo of his car with a great big pink dildo on the front of it. What a waste.
So I'm assuming his comment as to then not being Catholic was more than likely down to the condoms being strewn all over the place.
Oh, yes. That was definitely definitely a protest towards his both his anti-abortion stance and his we don't use contraception stance. They call him posh scum, so he doubles down on the posh. Brilliant. Avinash says, you may not wish to search dildo while keeping your screen up. Yes, I realized that after pressing the enter key. But then I very much doubted that someone had created a dildo with Jacob Rees-Mogg's face on it. That was going to be...
It is the internet.
Well, if you can think of it, porn will eventually be made of it. So there you go. Sutsugan says, don't listen to the previous guy. That's crazy talk. Search all the porn, you degenerate. Well, as I am not a degenerate, I think we'll avoid that one. The cowards waited till he was on holiday like the snakes they are, says the show comment man. I think that's very true. Like, they don't want to get in trouble. They just want to LARP as some advocate for political change by not advocating for anything but not liking someone. So criminal damage it is. The changing eating and drinking habits, however, of the British UK consumers have been revealed by data which shows that old favourites are losing popularity. Moves towards healthier diets can be seen in recent decades. Funny that, now that we have more research, and shifts towards more low-calorie soft drinks. Calories aren't bad for you, so it's not... That's not necessarily a sign of a healthier diet to say low calorie. It's like Diet Coke has no calories. It's so healthy. Skimmed milk, which is also not particularly healthy, and fresh fruit. Yet weekly fresh fruit, interestingly, healthy in moderation. Yet weekly consumption of chips, pizza, crisps, and ready meals has soared. Yes, we have an obesity epidemic in our low-income households in particular. The details are revealed in new figures from the National Food Survey, which has been running since the Second World War, who are hoping everyone goes back to rationing to make their job infinitely easier. The new data from 150,000 households who took part in the survey, combined with the information from 2000 to 2014, which is already available, shows a dramatic shift from white to brown, wholemeal and other bread. Now, this is already misleading, given that, or the title is misleading. Then, in a way, it's like they're emphasizing that healthier diets are on the uptick, that junk food is cheaper and therefore more plentiful as well, and we have a larger population. But this is drinking less tea and eating more junk food. It's all bad. It's all bad. Oh, but by the way, it's actually quite good in that sense. Britons have reduced the amount of bread they eat by 40%. A good thing, because it means that more nutrient-rich products like greens and meat are more widely available. Based on a 40-gram slice from a medium loaf, the amount of people is eaten from 25 to 15 slices a week. Do either of you eat a lot of bread? Because I don't.
I guess I could be described as a bread eater.
It's bread for toast in the morning, a sandwich for lunch, and bread pudding to polish off your.
Well, yes. If you eat some cold meat or so on for lunch, then you will have some bread with it and perhaps some salad.
Mm.
In that regard, I guess my bread intake would be higher than the average, I guess.
Perhaps. I used to like toast, but it doesn't do much for me anymore. So I don't eat much bread unless I've made it myself, and even then I only have maybe one slice, just if I fancy it. It's like a treat rather than a staple of sandwiches.
I'm trying to think. I have actually not been eating bread for the past month at all. But even though I absolutely love bread, I've just been trying to cut down on it because it's not great.
Well, no, so, it's pure sugar.
God must be in serious trouble here.
God?
Yes.
Why is that?
Give us, Lord, our daily bread.
No, he's still getting all the daily bread. In fact, he's hoarding it for himself. That's why.
Yes, he's investing in the time later for more bread.
Rose of Dawn saying bread as a treat. That's depressing. Well, you could still have cake as a treat and stuff like that as well. But I mean, bread is like less of a staple food and more as a sort of every now and then if you fancy it, rather than you must have 2 slices of bread and whatever filling for lunch. I just think people are eating differently across a lot more salads, certainly, but also a lot more ready-made.
Eating bread, it was just a way of shoveling butter into your mouth. It was absolutely great. Again, it's just butter is amazing, to be honest with you. And bread was just like the way of getting it in.
Traditional spreads such as butter, margarine, and dripping. I've never had dripping.
It's very healthy.
Have all fallen in popularity since '74. Is dripping like gravy, effectively?
No, it's the fat off the meat.
So it's like what you would mix into gravy. Okay.
Kind of. There's also lard. That's very healthy to cook with as well.
Yes.
Cheap as well.
I remember that once, this wasn't too long ago, they actually made all sorts of inquiries with companies, and officially nobody sells margarine because they all now refer to themselves as spreads.
Oh, yes, because they're too much vegetable oil to be considered margarine anymore.
But of course, what is also interesting is the fact that margarine is a mispronunciation, but it's a mispronunciation.
Margarine.
Well, no, it's margarine. It's
margarine.
Well, it's a G followed by an A. So why would it be J?
Because reasons. It's the English language, for goodness sake. But why would there be consistency?
Well, no, but it is actually a mispronunciation that has somehow snuck in.
I believe that you may be going mad in your old age, Britisher.
A bit like Celtic Glasgow, where again it's actually a
Celtic. Or are you saying Glasgow should be Glasgow?
Well, no, we're talking of the Celts, and yet they suddenly become Celtic when they're in Glasgow.
Oh, I see. I have no idea. The Great British Cuppa has also declined since the 70s. Tea consumption has fallen from 68 grams per person per week to just 25 grams. Now, it would be interesting.
Well, something ought to be done about that.
Also, I would be interested in the stats on whether or not this is just standard tea, like Thai Fu, Yorkshire tea and that sort of thing, because specialty tea in recent years has definitely gone through the roof. So I don't know about that. Britons are drinking on average just 8 cups of tea a week today, down from 23 in 1974.
23? That sounds how much my mother takes in one day.
That's pretty much.
As a kid, I was like, what the hell?
Another great British staple, fish and chips, also appears to be in decline. The amount of chips we eat has gone up significantly, but consumption of white fish and takeaway fish have both more than halved between 1974 and 2014. It's almost as if the increasing prosperity of the British Isles over the last 40 years has led to an increase in choice.
God, man.
People are eating about the same amount of fresh vegetables, yes, because we got those first, as they were 40 years ago. But we've gone off greens, with consumption of courgettes, mushrooms, aubergines, and packs of stir-fry, all increasing instead. I'm sorry, isn't courgette a green vegetable?
Yeah.
Very strange.
And isn't stir-fry veg also going to be green? Because it's going to have, like, lettuce and cabbage.
I think stir-fry veg is white cabbage, bean sprouts and noodles. I think that's the main bulk of it. There might be some seed pods mixed in there, some quinoa. Remove kebab.
Quinoa. I thought it was pronounced quinoa for ages.
Always called it quinoa, but quinoa when I want to sound extra posh for my viewers.
I'm saying quinoa.
Yes. Let me see. Changing technology and increase in freezers and microwaves has led to shifts in what we're eating. Consumption of ready meals and convenience has increased 6-fold. I don't necessarily think that's technology, though. I think that is almost certainly due to the changing way that the workforce interacts with the daily life. I mean, feel free to weigh in.
I think it's also a matter of the sophistication of the supermarkets.
Yes.
As to what they are actually nowadays capable of doing.
Yes, it's not really local greengrocers anymore, is it? It's big chain supermarkets.
I mean, it's the logistics behind it. So I think, even though we had the same supermarkets 20 years ago, I think their ability to cater to certain things has risen immensely.
Zerzor says, isn't quinoa French for witch black? Racist confirmed. Would that not be quinoa? Quinoa? Like, K? I'm not sure. Parce que?
Qu'est-ce que c'est?
No comment.
You know French, British. Surely you should know. Are you just you're gonna let the racism lie there and call me a racist? You swine.
Yeah, indeed. Yes. I'm just putting you down as another Alex Jones on the rise, whom I'll have to point out to the various social media companies.
Right. I have something which will make you spit your tea out, Britisher. Can you read that headline for us?
No, I refuse.
Well, I'm afraid we're not going anywhere until you eat your greens and pronounce the title of this article.
How the British have preserved English despite the Americans.
As people may have noticed, how Americans have preserved British English, which I very much doubt, but we shall see.
I think I do understand where this is coming from.
I can only think of one particular word.
And which word
the
would that
Americans
be?
have preserved? Gotten rather than got.
Oh,
the Americans still refer to gotten, and the only context in which we still use it is ill-gotten gains. But other than that, we don't use gotten.
No, I genuinely, and this is a thing, it was pretty much the use of the word got instead of gotten was sort of beaten into me as a child. I used to say gotten quite a lot, and then I would get in trouble.
You would watch too many American movies.
Or just too many cartoons in the mornings, being 5 or 6 years old, and my dad would.
So your parents decided to do the right thing and batter the American out of you. Yes, which was only the right thing to do.
I turned out correct.
Yes, you otherwise could be someone on YouTube right now shouting into the microphone that they're turning the frogs gay.
Well, if I had the income of Alex Jones, I don't know whether or not I'd necessarily complain. But there we go. If I got to spout off whatever was on my mind, if I rolled out of bed and went, aliens!
Yes, then, but they sound like that whether they earn a lot or not.
It's true. It's true. In fact, I may come back to this article since it's horrendous, but it is connected to language. And I am expecting Sarah at some point in the next half an hour. If she doesn't turn up, then we will come back to it anyway. But we can talk about this because it's amusing. Perhaps you read this one, Ginger Bill. Read the title for us.
Christopher Robin. Winnie the Pooh film denied release in China.
That they tried to sneak the communist ideal through Winnie the Pooh. As you can see, the clear red shirt was blatant.
The red and yellow, yes.
Red and yellow, blatantly. You'd think they'd be all for that. But you wonder.
That's no longer known as a plain red shirt. That's a dankula shirt, isn't it?
Oh, grief. No reason has been given for the decision, but it's believed to be a part of a nationwide clampdown on references to that most dangerous of dissident intellectuals, Winnie the Pooh. Chinese authorities have been blocking images of Winnie the Pooh on social media since last year, after A.A. Milne and his bear became a symbol of political dissent. Oh, I see. Xi Jinping has been compared to Winnie the Pooh.
You only just heard this.
Yes, this is all new to me.
This has been around for some time. Yes,
I imagine Xi Jinping, when hearing that he'd been
referred to him as Winnie the Pooh, and very quickly the Chinese authorities started going to extreme lengths in trying to somehow,
eradicate
prohibition Winnie the Pooh from the internet.
Prohibition doesn't work. We've noticed this. But my point is that I imagine when Xi Jinping heard that Winnie the Pooh was being compared to Winnie the Pooh, he went, "Oh bother."
Well, I could imagine he would have just sat there and gone, "Phew," as in that could have been a lot worse. I mean, if Winnie the Pooh is the worst thing they're comparing me to,
yes.
But obviously, one as someone who has got his own school of communist thought, because there is now such a thing as Shiism, like as there was before Maoism, he obviously doesn't take kindly to such mild taunting.
No. I will taunt you a second time. Yes.
So he obviously must be a very well-balanced, humble individual to take umbrage at that, because you would think if his underlings started censoring it and he didn't really care, he would let them know.
Yes. Rose of Dawn says, what's strange is that Shanghai Disneyland has 2 Winnie the Pooh rides, and Winnie the Pooh makes an appearance in the parade.
What?
So it must be the only place in China where you can see Winnie the Pooh. There you go. It's quite crazy. Isn't this quite old news apart from the recent movie? Apparently. I mean, this is 2015, so there's no wonder that I missed it then. But Disney's A Wrinkle in Time was also denied release. However,
well, it was apparently very bad.
However, Skyscraper, Mission Impossible, and Ant-Man and the Wasp are still open in the country. I believe China is very restrictive on the films it has. Like, it's only allowed a certain number of foreign films per year, and the vast majority of those are Disney films. So it doesn't surprise me that they would ban the odd 1 or 2 anyway.
I've not heard that they had a limit on how many films they allow. That's new to me. I did hear that they have got some very, very strange rules as to what they may disallow. I mean, one of the big problems for any kind of filmmaker is to avoid anything that involves ghosts or magic, because it might offend the Chinese.
I see.
So, Ghostbusters, for example, you can't release in China. So that is also one of the reasons why there has not been any attempt at a remake of Big Trouble in Little China. Because you would think in this day and age, Big Trouble in Little China would be an obvious film to remake given the size of the Chinese market. But because it was all about the undead and ghosts and magic, it would not be permitted in China.
I see.
That's China, really interesting.
Yeah, China does have a quota system, restricting foreign movie imports to 34 titles a year on a revenue sharing basis. But it will open up. It opened up further.
35
to increase that a little bit. But the China does a weird thing as well, where they demand that you give over partially your intellectual property rights if you take it to China as well. So they have to revenue share with if Disney release in China, they have to revenue share. It's the nature of things.
So we own some of it because it's shown here. Well, fine. I mean, once we've done Brexit, Britain should just immediately implement the same thing. Like that, we'll get to own a share of Star Wars, and
and hopefully they will fob off and won't sell it here because it's an awful franchise at the moment. Maybe they'll get the message. Let's not go down that rabbit hole either.
No, let's not go that.
Goodness me.
Offended a lot of the audience.
Where were we? Yes, they basically they don't like it very much, and it's a serious effort to undermine the dignity of the presidential office and Xi himself. Makes sense. Global Risk Insights being a very knowledgeable company there. There you go. You've no doubt seen as well in other news.
The very sad news.
Very sadly, Barry Chuckle has passed away.
And no doubt everybody in America who's watching this will be scratching their heads going, what on earth are they talking about?
He died from, it's cancer he's died from. Oh, the release, the news.
Yes.
Oh.
It's very sad. To give you an idea of the kind of humor of the Chuckle brothers, if you're not familiar, it's the sort of thing where the two of them shared a bed, and in the middle of the night, one of them wakes up and goes, I don't know what the time is. The other one says, I'll find out. Pass me that trombone, and starts playing the trombone. At which point someone outside yells, stop playing that trombone. It's 2 a.m. And so naturally that's how they find out the time. Very, very silly. Very silly. It seems.
Or what's the other one? Where
it was very much targeted at a very young audience.
Oh yes, very much.
It's what is it, Lauren Hardy, but for like very young people. In that regard, very slapstick, but not. Yeah, you know what I mean. I'm trying to just give an American.
I don't remember. They used to have a show called Chuckle Vision, and I remember. Yes, I remember the theme tune, but the only scene I can physically remember from it is one of them standing at the end of the table, which is a very, very long table outside a castle, and the table is covered in blancmanges. And I have no idea about the context of this scene or what is said in this scene, but I have a distinct image that my brain has decided to capture for all eternity of Barry Chuckle standing in front of a blancmange. There you go.
Well, there is, of course, one thing that was a recurring situation that would appear in almost every episode. It would be where the two of them have to end up adjusting something. So the table is somewhat in the wrong place in the room, and they end up picking it up, obviously one at each end, and having to position it just right. And it would invariably end up with the two of them going, to me, to you, to me, to you.
To me, to you.
That was just one of those endless little running gags that they had. On that note,
stuff where they were building like fences and stuff, and all of a sudden it was like, yeah, it's fine, and then all of a sudden they knocked it and it was all fall down because it was absolutely silly things. Oh, I know it sounds daft. I still love the stuff. Or they build a fence and they put a gate in it, and it was all fine. The fence was all stuff, and then they shut the gate and it just fell down.
It's very much something that people associate with their childhoods.
Yes,
I mean, to me, the Chuckle brothers, they were, they were much later, so I never really got to know them. So anybody who is of a certain age, the Chuckle brothers are almost as unknown as to Americans, because we never saw them as children.
I wouldn't say that's true, because they were still doing Chuckle Vision even like now, like very, very recently. Until like a few years ago.
How many children's programs do you watch these days?
Very true.
Very true. Was it someone in chat says, were they cliches or did they create them?
Were they existing cliches? No, I think in that regard, they created those particular cliches.
Quite possibly.
If you're on television for long enough, then you invariably almost become your own cliche.
Quite possibly. I'll tell you what then. Shall we move off from this rather morbid subject onto our last topic, which will be the how Americans preserve British English, and I'll save the longer one for next time, which is going into the history of Britain's centuries-old secret slang. But I'm sure British would love to talk about that one much more than Americans, but here we are, and I'm running this stream, not him. So let's go into it, shall we?
Yes, I was just very tempted at that particular moment to, broadcast the sound of a raspberry through the microphone, but I thought otherwise at the last moment.
Would you care to just do a raspberry anyway, just for the amusement of the chat?
No.
Oh dear, fair enough. Rosadorn.
That was British.
Rosadorn says the Chuckle brothers were visionaries.
Visionaries. Well, there you go.
According to Alex Jones, the Chuckle brothers did 9/11. There we go. And quoting from Wikipedia, the true origin of the blancmange is obscure. Thanks for that. Right. Here we go. It makes for a great story. When settlers moved from England to the Americas from the 17th century, their speech patterns stuck in place. That was particularly true in some more isolated parts of the US, such as on islands and in mountains. As a result, the theory goes, some Americans speak English with an accent much more akin to Shakespeare's than to modern-day Britons. That's not entirely right. Ooh! This might be a good article. Britisher, there might be a good article. The real picture is more
What you're saying is there may be hope.
There may be hope, yes. Carry on down the Khyber, I think. One feature of most American English is what linguists call rhoticity, the pronunciation of R in words like card and water.
Just go to the West Country, and you'll still hear.
It turns out that Brits in the 1600s, modern-day Americans, similarly, largely pronounced all of their R's. Marissa Brooke researches language variation in Canada. Many of those immigrants came from parts of the British Isles where non-rhoticity hadn't yet spread. The change towards standard non-rhoticity in southern England was just the beginning at the time the colonies became the US. So at least when it comes to their treatment of the 18th letter of the alphabet, Americans generally sound more like Brits several centuries ago. So do Canadians west of Quebec, thanks to loyalists fleeing north during the Revolution. Another divergence between British and North American English has been a move towards broad A's in words like path, as opposed to path.
It is path. I'm sorry, it's path.
Yeah, that's fair enough. The pronunciations of the early colonists...
But these people also say Arabs when it comes to pronunciation of A's. So do we really want to take their advice on it? And it is path.
I can hear the bile in your voice rising, Britisher.
It's glass, it's bath, it's path.
It's glass, it's bath, it's path. In the same way that
this is your volunteering to hand in your British passport, I believe.
No.
In the same way that it is
I'm not from the south.
In the same way that it is Newcastle and not Newcastle. Anyway.
And please notice how I said passport.
Not passport.
Yeah, it's not passport.
Can tell. I wonder what chat's doing. Is American speaking English cultural appropriation?
No, it's a disgrace.
If you look at it's a disgrace. if it's a bastardization, as opposed to a bastardization.
You said not bastardization. You said bastardization.
I said bastardization as opposed to bastardization. It's interesting.
I'm glad to see I'm having an effect on you.
You're not having an effect on me. I always spoke like this, you cretin. Anyway,
it's cretin.
It is cretin. I know. I was catching you out there. Here we go. If you watch my latest video, you'll see all the things which people are culturally appropriating from quote unquote white people culture. 2 minutes of your life perfectly spent, I have to say. Anyway, at first, these colonial legacies of pronunciation seem especially apparent in certain remote areas of the US. Hence the argument that the US have preserved Shakespearean English. For instance, Tangier Island in Virginia has an unusual dialect, which is unintelligible even to other Americans, although that's not particularly difficult. If you use a word with more than 3 syllables in it, most Americans will be...
With a name like Tangier Island, I would expect them to have a somewhat North African way about themselves.
Potentially. Some speech patterns, including rounded O's, seem like a dead ringer for the dialect of the west of England, which has led to some observers to claim a strong lineage from early Cornish settlers to the current Tangier dialect. Interesting thing about Cornwall, actually, there's a strong possibility, according to biblical scholars, that Joseph of Arimathea and Jesus may have visited the Cornish Isles because it was a trade route, a sea trade route, a stopover point for one of the major trade routes around the area at the time. There you go.
Well, isn't there supposed to be some tree that
yes,
goes back to Joseph?
Well, they used
Arimathea?
The thorn, and it used to be, but it got basically torn up by pagans, and then a load of cuttings were taken by the locals who were trying to preserve it at the time, which have now also been vandalized by hippies.
So the tree-hugging pagans took it out on a tree, did they?
Yeah, basically. And now the only remaining one the neighbors complain about because hippies come and dance around it and hang things off it, and they're killing it as well. So there you go. Linguist David Shaw has noted that the claims are exaggerated, which we all knew all along, that the island's isolation rather than any freezing of Elizabethan speech patterns is responsible for its linguistic quirks. Thank you very much.
Moving on.
Another US area.
We don't need the rest of the article.
You don't want the rest of it.
Proved right. We'll just leave it there.
You are hating this. Goodness. I mean, this is the only article I have left for you, to be perfectly honest, Richard. So you're going to have to suffer through, perhaps. Or we could end early. That's also entirely possible, you know. In fact, yes, I think so, because my throat is absolutely killing me. Unless you have something in particular you want me to search for.
What have you done to your throat, may I ask? Or can we put this down to a shortage of tea?
It is a shortage of tea. I finished my tea.
It goes back to the very article we were discussing earlier.
Well, I finished my tea about 5-10 minutes into the stream, and then, of course, I've been talking almost non-stop now for 2 hours. So there you go. That's that. Does anyone have anything else interesting from chat? You can just put a search term for me to pop in, because you won't be able to link articles.
I'm afraid you're now asking them to make contributions that have something to do with Mog and purple dildos.
Oh, also entirely possible. They want me to search for Mog on Pornhub, no doubt, or something to that. Zertzitzer says, I reiterate, there will come a day when the British throw their tea into the Channel. And I will rue the day that comes.
Well, if it's enough tea, then you can drink the Channel.
But it would be too salty, man. Come on, think logically.
Damn it, I forgot it. Damn.
It's just not the same.
We'll have to wait till global warming gets rid of all the salt. It'll be fine.
Well, no, there wouldn't be any global warming back then, by that time. No. Because the cold from beneath would be that intense, because hell would have frozen over.
Of course.
Zertzitz also mentions you would have to boil the English Channel. And I mean, we don't really want to do that. As much as it would be funny to see the French struggle with the idea of a boiling channel in front of them, there is always the risk that it might evaporate, and then we would have nothing between us and those cheese-eating surrender monkeys.
Part of the French. Think of the horror.
Joe Neverton says, Count Dankula sent a picture of his balls to JRM via Snapchat. Wait. I wasn't aware that JRM was on Snapchat.
Yeah, that's what I was about to ask. It's not the sending of his picture of his balls, but what?
So Scowen says, think logically.
Could I ask Joe Neverton one question regarding that particular action? Does anybody know why Count Dankula should have taken to that particular course of action?
I imagine he was simply playing a game with him of international cock or ball, Britisher. It's very simple. Is it a cock or is it a ball? It comes with a theme tune. You sing it to one of those football anthems. Da, 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 da. You know, international cock or ball. But is it a cock or is it a ball?
For some reason, that sounds very much like a Ring of Fire.
Oh, I have no idea.
Wait, it says someone's got something for me. It says, how do you reconcile your dislike for the French with your love of existentialism? I don't have a love of existentialism, and I do actually like the French.
Existentialism has somewhat grown beyond the French, one would say. It's left them behind.
You like the French, but from a distance.
Yes. Their food is nice. That's about it.
There we go. Anyway,
Count Dankula always does it. It's his thing. He does on Snapchat. He's a Scot, after all.
Yes, I had many northern friends.
I've got a feeling that asks more questions than it answers.
Quite possibly. I know that certainly many people in the military thought it was hilarious to do that sort of thing. But there we go. I think I'm going to call it to a close here, gents. Oh. Thank you very, very much for joining me for this this week's episode of Fake Accents Unite. I'm not sure when I'll next be streaming. I'm moving up to London later this week and doing various bits and pieces, but I hope to see you all next Monday for the next Fake Accents Unite. And of course, any content that I produce between now and then. Thank you very much to the chat for being here. It's always a pleasure to read your somewhat disturbing comments, and we'll catch you all on the next one. Take care, everyone. Good night.
Toodle.
See ya.